Hello. So this is our last lecture of the week. This whole week we have been exploring space in its various dimensions. We looked at the work of Henri Lefebvre, we looked at Doreen Massey, we saw David Harvey and how he takes Marx and spatializes it. With Lefebvre, he reminds us that space is produced, that space and social relations need to be seen together. They are mutually constituted. He gave us the idea of social space as being constructed simultaneously by representational space, representations of space, and space through which and how we move. And that, he says, together constitutes social space. It is not one over the other. Space is not an abstraction. It is something through which we move. It is something to which we give meaning. And there is also the sense of abstract space as that which is produced by architects and planners and appears on, let's say, a master plan or a plan. So he gave us a very rich way of understanding these various notions of space. Well, then we spoke about Doreen Massey, and she tells us that we haven't thought enough about space. We kind of use space in an unreflexive manner. It is an idea that is there in our language, in our subconscious, but it is not something that we have reflected on enough. And for Doreen Massey, space is always relational. Space is never out there, never outside us, never outside our social relations. It is mutually constituted along with our social relations. She also reminds us that space is always under construction. It is never done. And I think most architects, and today in this lecture we will be meeting an architect very soon who will be talking about her work as part of this tutorial. But if you speak with any architect, they will also mostly agree, I think, with the idea that it is always under construction, right? There is a master plan and a building comes up, but then inhabitants come, they change it, different meanings are assigned, different inhabitants come, different occupants come, and all of that. Then we also spend some time looking at Limits to Capital by David Harvey, and he takes Marx's ideas about the accumulation of capital, about the production of surplus value, and spatializes it. He looks at how space acts as a fix for the several crises that are inherent and integral to the way capitalism works. So now we are going to take in today's tutorial these various ways in which we've thought quite deeply about space, and I've invited today to be with us architect Apurva Sharma. Apurva is an architect who graduated from CEPT, the Center for Environmental Planning and Technology in Ahmedabad, and then she went on to do the IIHS fellowship, where they looked at urban contexts, where they looked at rural contexts, and did several interdisciplinary studies, but at least from what I know of her work, many of them with a very strong spatial perspective. She has worked as part of the Abohar Fellowship in North India, designing, reflecting on, researching this small border town in Punjab, and is also a practicing independent architect doing sustainable architecture in the Chandigarh Tri-City region. So with that, I'll hand over this space to her, and she will be speaking about three different ways through which her movements through space, her experience of space, and her representation of space have produced space for her. So with that, welcome Apurva.
Thank you, Anu. I'm very happy to be talking about these three different ways in which I have engaged with different places through my, so some of this work is through my architecture degree, like while we were doing our degree in the project there, and then some of it is during the IIHS fellowship, and some of it is travel. So there are these three different times also, places also, and engagements also that I will be talking about. So the first one is titled The Cow World. We did this as part of a humanities assignment, and it's a group project which we did with 4 or 5 of us through the entire semester. And what we really did here was literally follow cows for the entire semester, 1 day a week. We would go to this neighborhood called Vastrapur. So Vastrapur is a gaon, with a village which is within Ahmedabad. And so throughout this semester for our humanities class, and sometime here and there, we would be in this village. We'd identified 5 different cows. We'd figure out their names, and then we would literally follow where they go, what they're doing, which people they're speaking to, or not speaking to, but engaging with, or who's feeding them grass, who's selling that grass that they're eating, which corner of the street are they sitting on, and then coming back and actually drawing it all out in this map that you can see on the screen. So each color on this map is representing each of these cows. In the comic strip above is certain engagements between the cows and the humans, or maybe a garbage dump, or where they're taking a dump also. So it's sort of mapping all of these different points on this map. And so you'd see that there's one particular route which is much denser than the others. And that's the one where 4 cows would sort of stick to. They'd stick to that route. There was a temple on that route. There was where the cows would be fed. There's a person who's selling the feed. People would buy the feed near the temple and then give to the cow. And then they sort of be making their way, negotiating their way across the street. And then there's a place where there are garbage collection points, which is where they'd end up ultimately. And then they'd go back to their owner, so that the owner of these cows is also sort of living in that village. So they have this route, and then they go back home to that. There's one particular kind of eccentric cow who would take a different route, and along that different route also it has certain points. People expect that cow will be coming, and they leave rotis outside, on a plinth. So yeah, so it's this map that we made, through which we learnt, how in our imagination of Ahmedabad, none of this actually exists, right, in that larger narrative of what Ahmedabad is. And yet within Ahmedabad there's this city, within Ahmedabad there's this village in which there are this entire sort of network and system in which these cows are negotiating the street, engaging with human beings, engaging with the space, engaging with the garbage, engaging with the temple and the plinth on which the rotis are kept. So through that we kind of learned how to see how how society, how the fact that there are cows within the city, and how space are sort of all interacting with each other in this way. And the next map, which is underneath, is what is sort of abstracting this entire sequence of events, or sequence in which these cows are moving. So it is then guessing that after how many hours will the cow need to be fed again, and therefore which direction will it turn to, or where it might actually take a dump. And it's sort of proposing that maybe these are the different routes that cow would take in a certain period of time, and using that to then change a new plan that you would make for a neighborhood. With cows in mind, if you would want to plan. So that's the first engagement that I'd like to talk about. So the second engagement is what we did in Chennai. Now in Chennai, it was part of the Urban Fellows program, and we were engaging with a lot of different actors. We were engaging with activists, we were engaging with government officials, we were engaging with villagers that actually lived along the sea, who were sort of dependent on the sea for fish, so fisher folk. And so all of these different conversations, experiences, what was going on in Chennai at the time, which was just after a major flood event, everything that was happening. And then in order to sort of make sense of what was going on, this drawing was made. And so in this drawing, the relationships that it is discussing is that a major sort of a unit that is producing electricity is made on the edge of the coast. That is releasing really hot water into the sea. Now that is affecting the lives of the fisher folk. and it is destroying the mangroves that are all along the edge. Now, the mangroves are what protect the city against the floods. And so what happens is that this entire system in which they're also sort of building these, like we call them groins here because that's probably what the, anyway, basically these things that come into the sea that are supposed to sort of protect against the rough weather. So you cut the mangroves or you destroy the mangroves, and then there are these, inserted stone units which are supposed to protect the coast. But they don't actually work. In fact, they reduce the fish in the water in that area even more, or destroy the livelihoods of that entire stretch even more. But so there's a whole sequence of events that is going on for a very long time, after which then these floods happen. And when the floods happen, then along the entire stream, everybody who has sort of settled along the stream is being evicted because their homes are getting destroyed in the slums. And so there are like these various things that are happening, and they're all sort of related to each other. They're happening in space. Society or different stakeholders, different people in the city are engaging with all of these narratives very differently. And yeah, this drawing is an attempt to sort of start to make sense of what is, going on between all of these different actors. And of course, it is coming from the conversations I had or with the people that I met in that week of engagement in Chennai. So there's also so like you can see here, there's also a kind of a protest going on, a chain link protest where, save the creek is what we're sort of talking about. So that's the sort of second engagement, and now I'll move on to the third one. Now the third drawing is a very different one. It's actually a travel sketch. And here this was a drawing, and you could probably see also from the way it's sort of composed on this sheet, because it's done when I'm on a trip with my friend, and we're in Meghalaya, and my engagement with this landscape where we are moving a lot. We're not, in one city. We're actually moving across landscapes. We're flying into Guwahati, and then we're driving across the entire landscape, and so it's documenting everything that we're seeing along the way, and it has these very particular stories. For example, I mean, there's one particular one where it was Christmas time, and we were seeing groups of people singing carols on the road, like on the highway, and going from one place to another. There was also a river that sort of became the boundary between India and Bangladesh itself. So your internet or your mobile connection would keep switching, and I've sort of made a little note of that in this drawing. So yeah, it's how I'm sort of moving across this landscape, what my perceptions of this landscape are, and how I see different engagements with space, with people, with how they're sort of moving, and how they're changing these different spaces as well. So yeah, okay. So these were the three sort of engagements that I wanted to share with you today, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Apurva, for sharing these three so interesting and rich engagements with us. What really came across to me was the different meanings that you have assigned, and how to the spaces that you've walked through or observed cows walking through, or in terms of looking at Chennai, the kind of space that is produced because of contingent factors in that particular landscape. It also was very fascinating for me, especially this relationship between theory and practice. When we looked at theory in our lectures, they are, even though Lefebvre and Massey and even Harvey try to make it try to make our understanding of space as produced, as lived, as experienced, but it was in your actual engagements with space that these came across as rich, lively, thriving, spatial, social encounters. So once again, thank you so much for bringing our theory to life. Thanks.